right, Catapulting Commissions family, welcome back to this week's episode of Catapulting Commissions. I have a treat for you today. We've always talked about sales, sales leadership, sales development on the Catapulting Commissions podcast. And in today's episode, I've brought back one of my original mentors, coaches, and closest friends, JP Arlie. Now, let me tell you a little about JP. Not only is he a Hall of Fame manager, spent 22 years building an incredible business in the Cutco organization. He spent the last 6.5 years in a senior leadership role with Vivint. Not only that, but here's what the real nit and good stuff, I guess the good concept we're going to talk with JP about today. He is a graduate of the professional leadership program through the Harvard Business School, where he has gone back and now he provides executive leadership coaching and development to people who come through the Harvard Business program seeking that skill of enhancing their leadership skills. Now, today's show, we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about JP on leadership skills. Maybe we'll pick his brain a little bit on sales and sales development. At the end, I'll be sure to leave all the links to JP's social media. You can definitely follow and engage with him as he's on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. JP Arlie, welcome to the Catapulting Commission Show.
What up, Anthony? Long time no chat, brother. Good to see you. I guess I got the advanced copy of the book, so I'm glad to see you're doing well.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I do appreciate the giving the testimonial, seeing early sneak peeks in the book. It has gone to international bestseller, 6 different countries, 5 different categories, including #1 in sales and marketing. And I attest a lot of that to what I've learned from our friendship, which dates, I want to date you and I, but closer to 20 years than it is to 10 or 15. Long time running. So, dude, first, before we start this thing, everything going safe? You and the family? I know COVID has created a new way of working. Everything's safe where you're in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, the funny thing about COVID is I actually saw your mom on the first of 3 or 4 trips I had. It was in February. It was in Vegas. And I went February in Vegas. Then I went Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Cabo, Boston, and home, all during while COVID was launching. But so, yeah, the family's healthy. It was good to see your mom back in February. Sounds like everything's going well there as well. Also, so yeah, everything's good, man. Just we have 3,500 salespeople, 3,200 salespeople in the field right now, dealing with all the essential services that we provide, and not to mention they're masked up and all that stuff. So it's a little bit crazy, but things are good.
3,500 sales reps, 32, let's just call it over 3,000 sales reps dealing with this COVID deal. That does create a new challenge. So let's just jump into it. One of the things that I've learned most, and if you've read Catapulting Commissions and you've heard any of my previous blogs, I talk about the people who've coached and mentored me. And JP was one of the very first people that challenged me and really worked on developing me probably more than I saw in myself at such a young age, and has really created the footprint for where I'm at today. Now let's fast forward this, JP. You got 3,200 kids, 3,200 sales reps. I don't want to call them kids, but 3,200 sales reps, hundreds of managers out there. How do you develop somebody right now when there's so many external distractions?
Well, that's the thing, right? If you're not recruiting your people, somebody else or something else is. So you constantly have to put yourself in a situation where you're having influence. And so for me, it's all about controlling my master life calendar, right? So I know where I'm going to be. I'm speaking as a leader right now. I'm more of the, I run recruiting and training for Vivint. So I'm not the person in the field anymore, but I would want to make sure that my any leader would have their calendar dialed in. So their people, including their family and their friends, know exactly where they are, when they're going to be there. And then they use that calendar to control those situations. For example, if somebody's going on a week vacation and they know when they're going to do it, then I would make sure that that leader has some kind of event, one-on-one staff meeting, social event, the day before they leave, and then something the day after they get back. So when they're gone on vacation, they're bookending both sides of that disconnect, and especially in direct sales or 1099 sales, where you cat's away, the mice will play. I always want to make sure I left people with a direction to go in, and then when I disconnected, came back, had an opportunity to see what happened when I was gone. I never wanted to come back and have that conversation, especially if it's longer than a week, that the individual's quitting or moving to another company or recruited by somebody else. So for me to control all the chaos in the world, the larger your organization gets, the more important your calendar becomes as the truth, right? Once you set that calendar, you can never change an event, because then you lose confidence, conviction people have in your word of your schedule.
I like that. I really do like that. It's funny, as I still tie that principle you just discussed of bookending, and I think I first heard this nearly 18 years ago, and I still tie it in now. For example, it's 4th of July. If I'm headed out before 4th of July, there's always that right before I disconnect with my team, hey guys, here's what's going on. Here's my marching orders. On the back end, as soon as I get in, I try to have some event created just to re-engage people that I'm developing. And
Can I tell a funny story about
dude, please.
about you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So having to do with this calendar and this strictness of schedule, I totally forgot about this, but when I saw your mom in February, she reminded me that you lived with me for a minute. Well, it must have been 5 or 6 months or something, but it was an easy 5 or 6 months because I don't remember how long it was. But I remember you and I and a couple others, we went out to a bar in Pasadena and stayed out pretty late, had a few drinks, and it was a Saturday, late in our summer. And I wake up late on Saturday. I'm like, where in the hell is Anthony? And you come dragging in about an hour later. I could just see it on you. I'm like, where'd you go? He's like, well, we had that workshop on Saturday and I had to go run it. I had totally forgot I was in the schedule, but you had developed to a point where that schedule that is so important to honor, that hung over and all, you went in there and ran that workshop. And that's when I realized that obviously you were a complete and utter dog and stud. But more importantly, the importance of making people know, hey, what is right, what is agreed upon in advance, and you wouldn't deliver. And those people, if you wouldn't have been there, we would have lost the trust of those salespeople that showed up that Saturday.
It's funny, and I do remember that story. And as I progressed throughout my career, and some of these sales conferences provide the social atmosphere, I even to this day, I tell my team, hey, we show up when we said we showed up. And the line you just said, what is agreed upon in advance, or what is correct is what is agreed upon in advance. It's so funny. I still say that, and I still practice and believe it. But you talked about retaining trust of those salespeople by us honoring and respecting that schedule. Is there something that you believe or you teach, either your time developing and coaching me, or even through some of the clients that come through you through the Harvard Business Program, when people want to retain trust or gain trust of their sales force, how do they do that when they're coming in as a new leader?
That's a great question. And I've made mistakes doing that here in the last, changing companies, right? Coming from someplace where long time in the same spot with people that followed me into a new situation where I felt I had some answers to change, but they weren't willing to listen. And if you're into a new situation, you'll hear this in different formats, but 30, 60, 90, right? What do you want to do in the first 30, 60, 90 days? In fact, today before this call, I was talking to a CFO out of a agriculture company out of Northern England. He runs about half a million pound agricultural company, and they're looking to bring him on as the new CEO. And we're talking about some of these same things, is what is he going to do in the first 30, 60, 90 days of getting this promotion? And for him, because he's an analytical leader, that first 30 days has to be all about people, right? So he's going to go on a road show and meet with all the managing directors. If it's a portfolio company in the agricultural space, so he's going to go meet with all the managing directors of each department and just spend time, right? And we talked a lot today about no real business conversation, more like you need to know their spouse's name, their kid's name, their dog's name, their cat's name. I have a guy that used to work for me. When I see him at the airport, I always remember his girlfriend and his dog's names. It's in my phone. I just wrote it in my phone years ago, but I remember his name. And so he's going to spend the first 30 days on the road with the director, spending social time. And then he's got a 60-day plan. I'm not going to get into it. And then he's got a 90-day plan where the real change happens. So if you're taking a new role, and if I was interviewed for a new role, I would say, hey, how much runway do I have? Because if I come in and make this change in the first 30 days, I'm going to be the bad guy. So do I have 90 days to implement any real change? Because I'm going to spend the first 30 getting to know the people, and then so on and so forth. So I'd want to find out how much time I would have to make these changes. Now, some organizations are really young and have had really poor leadership. So, they bring somebody else in new, and typically people who survive poor leadership are committed. So somebody new comes in, they're like, I'll do whatever you want to do. I'll run through a brick wall for you. I'm just happy to have somebody that cares. But sometimes you'll take over an organization where the people that are left are the old dogs, and the old dogs have been doing the same thing the same way under the same radar and have been getting away with it. And it's funny that you say that quote, that repeated that quote of what's right is what agreed upon in advance, because the person who taught me that was Ed Reed. And Ed Reed was somebody that was in his 50s, and I took over an organization that he was in. I was 28 at the time, and I was a little intimidated having this legend fall underneath my leadership. And Ed taught me a ton. One of the things he taught me was exactly that. What is the rights was agreed upon in advance. And it took me a few months to kind of get comfortable with working with somebody that is much more mature, but he was easy to work with. So depending if you're taking over an organization or working in an organization that is old and stalwart or young and excited, the approach would be a little bit different, but 30, 60, 90 is what I would typically do.
I like that. You roll in a leadership plan in 30, 60, 90. Most salespeople get that 30, 60, 90 concept from their sales plan, but you talk about it coming from a position of leadership. And I know that I've taken over teams, and I've come in, and it's funny you say that, right? If you survive poor leadership, you're pretty loyal. Like, you're loyal to the company, you're loyal to your mission, whatever the situation is. But there is that time where you take over a team or you come into a position of leadership. You reference them as old dogs, right? And I came into a team, and I'm like, okay, there's people here that aren't motivated, aren't working, but have the security, have the tenure, have, really just a level of complacency. But it was a challenging point, because you use the analogy of you and Ed Reed. You were 28, he was 50. There was an age difference. But a lot of the times, the leaders that I've spoken to or that have come through the Catapulting Commission show are transitioning from being a peer to a leader. And so in that peer to leadership role, I've been on your team. Let's just say, we're on Team USA for United States sales team of Catapulting Commissions. We all work together. And tomorrow there's an opening for the director. Now, you were my peer yesterday. Tomorrow you're going to be my boss. Well, when you become that boss, it has a new problem of trying to establish that leadership role. Can you talk to me a little bit about that transition? Because the first analogy, you come from a position of power, CFO, CEO, gain the trust of the masses, roll your 30, 60, 90. And let's do a little pivot here. We've come up together, and now I'm your boss. How does that transition, what does that conversation look like when you become a leader?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And probably the biggest mistake people make when that happens, and in sales, it happens all the time, is they try to act like the boss on day one or day two or day three, where the reason they got the promotion is because they led from the front. They led out with their performance and not with their dictatorial management style. So most immature reps or salespeople that become managers or leaders will try to start acting like a manager or a leader, but that's not what got them the opportunity. What got them the opportunity is their performance in the field. And so you need to give yourself time to earn the respect of those peers. And I had this happen to me way back in the day. Still to this day, one of my best friends is Mark Lovis, who is a Cutco legend, and he became and I was a 21 or 22-year-old high school senior or college senior when I met him, and he was 18 or 19. And I went off and conquered the world for the first 3 or 4 years before he had a chance. And sure enough, he passed me and became my boss, right? And I didn't think anything of it, because Mark led from the front. He led through his work ethic, his thought process, his ability to explain to me what he wanted to be done. And Mark, I remember he would call me and he would manage me in a certain way. And if you know me at all, if you talk to me or manage me in a way that I don't like, I'm not going to wait a week, a month, or a year to tell you. I'm going to tell you in that 1 second. That doesn't work for me. And so Mark would call me and manage me a certain way, and I go, that doesn't work for me. Don't do it that way. This is what I need. And I always think of the movie, old movie, for those people who are listening and watching, Jerry Maguire, right? When Cuba Gooding Jr. and Jerry Maguire, he's like, you go across the middle, you take the big hit, right? Like some people like to be managed in a way where they're told why they're great. Some people like to be compared to others. Me, I just wanted to be given direction, right? What do you see me doing? What do you need me to do? And tell me how to do it. I remember one time I said, don't ever call me and tell me that somebody else is doing something better than I'm doing, because that doesn't work for me. I'm not motivated by somebody else losing for me to win. I'm motivating by becoming the better version of myself and becoming better at my job. So if you see something that I can do better, you tell me directly, you can do this better. I'm not going to take it personally as long as you aren't personal with me. Don't tell me you don't like my haircut and you're not doing a good job, because then I'll take it personally. So I don't know if I've got all the way to answer your question, but those are the things that popped into my mind, because I was that guy that was managed by a friend, and I deal with that now every day when we promote new leaders at Vivint. Is one day they were peers. Like we have a situation at Vivint where the older brother recruited the younger brother into the organization, and the younger brother is now the one in charge. He's one of the top reps in the company. He's a leader, and you talk to the younger brother, you'll say, "My big brother taught me everything I know about this situation, this company, yet he's the one in charge." And there's no conflict there because it's all about relationships first.
I like that. Relationships first, essentially people first is what I'm hearing. And you mentioned your story of how when you had a peer become your boss, and you're saying, hey, that doesn't work for me. That's not going to fly with me. Don't speak to me that way. Here's what I need from you. I need direction. I need this. And being a boss who used to be peers, because I too have transitioned from that role, as I think we've all have, those conversations are easy, right? If I had a JP on my team that was like, hey, Anthony, with all honesty, here's what I need from you. And I mean, a lot of my team that works with me listens to the podcast, and some of them will say, oh, you've talked about me or you've mentioned me. And this is one of those scenarios where I'll talk about my team. Yeah. When I tell people, hey, they come to me like, Anthony, here's what I need from you, or here's what I'm not getting. That makes leadership easy. What about, let's flip that scenario. Same scenario, we have a team, but now you have a shy JP, right? Someone who I know is talented, someone who I know can produce revenue, someone who I want in my organization, but we're not connecting there, or I feel a sense of timidness where you're not quite comfortable just to say, hey, tell me what I need. How do you extract that from that person?
So, yeah, I want to answer that, but I want to go back to what you just said about you and I are the type of people that are going to tell our leaders what we want. But when you're a new leader and somebody comes and tells you what they need, how do you react? Right?
Oh, yeah. Oh shit. It's kind of how it goes.
Right? Some people are like, get ego and go, I'm the boss. Right?
Yeah.
I can't tell. I would love people to come to me and say, this is how, hey, JP, I love you. I love working for you, but this is what I need from you. It makes our job so much easier than trying to figure out, what the body language is and everything else. So more importantly is think about when you want people to come to you, but if, we have we have many rules in our house, but 3 major rules with my boys. Number 1 rule is always tell the truth. And now they're getting older, 9, 7, and 5. And I don't know how many times I say a week, have you ever gotten in trouble if you've told me the truth the first time? And the answer is always no, because right now they're not driving. They're not doing things that are going to really cause trouble to the house and the family. So I'm trying to establish trust as long as they tell me the truth the first time that they're not going to get in trouble. So now if they tell me the truth the first time and I punish them, whatever the punishment is, I'm going to lose all credibility with them. And so managing people is the same way. If you want feedback from your team and then your team brings you feedback and you don't listen, you disregard it, or you change the subject, right? They're never going to bring you feedback again, ever. So now moving on to your question, when you have somebody that is shy and they have potential, I would just have that conversation. I'm a big fan of the power of the one-on-one. I don't know if you've had John Berghoff on your podcast yet, but a shout out to John. He taught me the Fab Five about coaching, the five questions, and try to get John on and have him talk about the Fab Five. I'm not going to steal him, but I've used that for almost a decade, 15 years now. And I want to get down to the why that of what they're working. So in corporate America, is what I'm dealing with right now. If somebody comes onto the team, and a situation I have right now, somebody's is a programmer by trade, right? And so, but he spent 5 years in the field while he's getting his degree, so he knows how to sell, he knows how to train, he knows what we need in our training team. But ultimately, he's going to end up in programming. And now he's not shy by any means, but he doesn't want to be in that role long term. Well, recently we had some positions open up in IT. I saw them on LinkedIn, posted by one of our IT people. I took a screenshot. I sent it to him. And I said, "Hey, this is sooner than I would have liked, right? But these positions are open, and I wouldn't be the leader. I wouldn't be the leader I am for you if I didn't tell you to go for it." His response to me was, "The time's not right. We haven't finished what we set out to accomplish. And you've been the best mentor to me, so let's get this finished before I go pursue those things." And so in his case, he wasn't shy, but he was in a role that he didn't want to be in long term. So if you're dealing with somebody that's quiet, that doesn't tell you what's going on, you got to find out where they want to go with this job, right? If it's corporate America and they just got out of college and they have a advertising background and they're in some support role, well, your job as a leader is to find an opportunity to put them in an advertising position in your company. And I have this conversation with anybody I would hire. If you're in this job for more than 18 months, then you and I are both not doing our job. You need to grow to a position where I can promote you or recommend you to the field that you want to be. And I will do that. The only thing I ask is you help me find and train your replacement. And so I always hated when people quit, left me high and dry. So I always wanted to make sure that I wanted to find a way to promote people into the field that they want to go in. But at the same time, I plant the seed that I want them to help me find their replacement. It's always served me well. It's really served me well, especially in corporate America.
That whole help me find your replacement, I hear retention out of that. And just in having that conversation, I can picture if I worked for you and you shared that conversation with me, it takes that relief, the stress off the shoulders of knowing that my time in this role may be temporary or may be permanent, and we need to have that discussion. So I like how you extract and pull that information out from your shyer employees, from people who aren't as vocal, let's say you and I, saying, "Hey, here's what I need." And as you said that, you're right, it does make the leadership job easy. Now,
let's talk about shy real quick, right? They're shy
okay.
at work, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen somebody who is so, and I can go a ton of different ways, but they may be shy in their job, but then you catch them on a Friday night at a random scenario and they're the one singing karaoke. They're the one holding court with their friends. You're like, wait, they're not this person at work. And if they're not this person at work, what am I doing to hold them back? And it's our responsibility to let them be themselves, let them be a voice. And the thing about leadership is, I was on a ladder last weekend. Somebody that works for me is really handy with construction, and we were talking about leadership. And I stopped for a second. I go, "Hey, let's talk about this right now. Right now, in my backyard, who's the boss?" He's like, "Well, I am." He said it to himself. I go, "Exactly. You tell me what to do, and I will do this. Working on my house, and you're helping me, but you know more than I do." If you're on a plane with me and our entire executive team, this guy's an Eagle Scout, and we crash land and we end up on an island, who's the boss? The CEO, the CFO, or are you taking the lead? He's like, "Damn right I am." So leadership is about opportunity. Shyness is about situation. And so you have to ask yourself, am I allowing my people to be on that deserted island with a bunch of executives and have a voice? And because absolutely, if we were stranded, I'm going to look to him and say, "Do you remember how to start a fire?" Right? I wasn't an Eagle Scout. I have watched movies. I could probably figure it out, but you probably have done it. And so if I see somebody who's not shy outside of work, but they're shy in work, I'm going to have that conversation. I said, "I need you to come out at work so you can be the person I need you to be here." So I know it was a tangent, but there's some really good nuggets there if you pulled them.
Oh man, there's tons of nuggets there. I mean, that whole having that conversation with your development about leadership in the right opportunities, in the right situations. It's funny, I tell everybody who works with me, hey, leadership's not a title. It's not like tomorrow you get this title and you're a leader all of a sudden. Like, leadership is earned. Leadership is, and especially in sales, right? Leadership is earned by showing people you care. Leadership is earned by being there, providing more value than you asked for in return. I mean, there's so many ways we can discuss and extract this form of leadership. But in your scenario you just referenced right there, you had somebody at your house. One of the challenges leaders have, and earlier in the Catapulting Commissions show, I had Anton Gunn, who's former senior advisor to Barack Obama, on the show. We had a similar dialogue, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. Where does leadership...
He's pretty lucky that he went before me.
There you go. Where does leadership and friendship go hand in hand? Does it draw a line? Same scenario. Now I have a team where these are my buddies, these are my friends, and now I'm someone's boss, quote unquote, or I'm in a position of leadership. How do we tie that friendship, leadership, work relationship, or can you tie it, or does it remain separate?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's Moneyball, right? If you've ever seen the movie Moneyball, it's like, I don't want to get close to him, I have to send him down or fire him. And look, I would rather cry with somebody at the end than run an inefficient team or not provide everything with them. The way I've always led, and this, is I lead from the heart. I lead with love. I lead with compassion. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you got to let somebody go. Sometimes somebody moves on. But because you gain their trust, if I had to fire you, Anthony, it would suck, right? And I'd be like, look, man, I've done everything I could. I looked for every possible different solution to find you a home here. But every home that I came up with would just be to hold you there so you and I, can feel good about it. But what's better is you can go ahead and list me as a reference, and anybody who calls me, in fact, let me go ahead and put a message out on LinkedIn, right? In fact, anybody listening, we just had to let some people go at Vivint, some top-notch salespeople. I'm not going to refer them to our competitors, right? But I would be more than happy to refer those people for sales, because the reason we had to let them go was really irrelevant to their ability to sell, right? But I would rather go to you and say, look, man, it's come time. We got to find a different home for you. I could have found some crappy home for you here, but instead, let me help you find a job. And I'll send out a tweet. I'll send out a LinkedIn post. I'd much rather go to bat for somebody, the job that they really, really want. We just had massive layoffs at Vivint before COVID, and then because of COVID, and many times people ended up better situation because of the skill they learned with a bigger company going and leveling up in a smaller company. I kind of went around that answer a bit, but I would rather cry with you on the day of termination than lead an inauthentic work relationship with you.
It's funny you say that, and give some history here, right? Again, JP was one of my original managers, my original mentors. We lived together for a little bit. If you didn't hear the story, 18, 19 years later, we're still friends to this day. And that lead from your heart, I do that right now with my team, with anyone who works with me. I'm pretty hard on my sleeve. I keep it direct. I cross those boundaries of friendship. I don't even call them boundaries. I want to work with people that I like to hang out with. And people ask when they interview with me, like, hey, what do you look for? I'm like, I list a lot of things. I look for a track record of success. I look for honesty, integrity, et cetera. I said, but honestly, one of the biggest things to me is if you and I were stuck in an airplane for 5 hours sitting next to each other, would I enjoy myself? If we were stuck in a car for 8 hours driving on a field ride, can I enjoy myself? Would I enjoy having the dialogue? Would I enjoy the conversation? And one of the things that I've learned from you that I share with people is, hey, we can be friends at work, right? But as long as we get work done, you don't ever force me to make a decision between work and friendship, because that's not really being a friend at the end of the day, right? If we're going to cross that and we're going to be friends, then we're going to work together and we're going to get things done. And I like, eventually if you have to let someone go or you have to have that discussion, it's never pleasant. It's never enjoyable. And anybody who's in a position of leadership is going to have to cross that road sooner or later. So I really dig what you're saying about, just lead from your heart. work with people you want to enjoy your time with.
In a performance environment, right? If they're a salesperson for you, or catapulting commissions, we're talking about salespeople. If you're catching somebody off guard because you're letting them go for lack of performance, that's on you as a leader. Because there should be many other conversations about their growth, their why they're working, what do they want to get out of the job? Are they on pace to do those things? And, you know, if you do this right, you don't really have to let people go. They go on their own, and they go with the fact that you cared enough about them. I'm always brought back to this recruiting interview I had years ago, where one of my favorite salesperson in the history of the world brought me one of his best friends to come work for me, and I took him to my office. I sat down, I started interviewing him, and it came down to it that he really wanted to go play professional golf. But wasn't entering tournaments because he didn't have the money. And I said, well, look, who pays for your car then? Well, my dad does. Well, who pays for your rent? Well, my dad does. Well, who paid for school? Your dad does. So you're let your dad pay for all that shit, but you're not going to call him up and say, Dad, can you enter me in 5 tournaments at $1,000 a pop? What are you afraid of? You afraid that you're going to fail just because you're no one golfer? And I just went at him, right? The tears came, right? Everything, and then he walked out, and I looked at the sales rep. Did you get him? I didn't even try to get him. It wasn't the right thing for him. And I followed up with him a few times after the fact to see and he's like, yeah, I called my dad. He entered me in the tournaments. To me, that's doing what's right by people. I could recruit anybody. I could have easily got him, but that wasn't what was right for him, because he was going to be thinking about leaving something else, his dreams out there. I didn't want to be a dream crusher. So in that interview, I found out the real why of life, and I went after that. And if you do that with people when they work for you, why are you working? I want to get married. I want to buy a ring, or I want to buy a house, or I want to buy a car. I want to retire. I want to pay off student loans. Well, why do you want to pay off student loans? Well, I saw my parents struggle with them. Well, what did you see when they struggled? Well, they couldn't do nice, fun things because they had the student loan debt. So the real goal is not making money. The real goal is not to live a life like their parents. And once you find out what the real goals are, when somebody's not performing, I can say, look, Anthony, I got to apologize, man. I haven't been doing my job. You told me that you wanted to do X, Y, and Z because of these reasons, and I'm letting you not do that. I'm allowing you to underperform, and that's not fair to you. So as much as it pains me, I got to sit you down. We got to talk about a performance improvement plan, because if you don't improve, then I'm not doing my job as a leader. I don't want you to leave. I don't want to get rid of you. But if you fail, that's going to hurt a hell of a lot worse than if I have to let you go. And that's how I lead. That's how I think about situations.
Dude, hearing that is relieving. That is the philosophy and principles of leadership, right? I'm in 18 years of professional sales. Once in my entire life, I've been handed a performance improvement plan. Didn't even know what those were, but I got a performance improvement plan, and it came out of right field. I mean, I had never had a discussion and never had any of this. I knew there were some challenges. I'm a smart guy. I knew the numbers weren't where they were supposed to be, but I continue to bring it up. Hey, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. And out of the blue, got a phone call one day. It was like, hey, I need to talk to you. Here's this performance improvement plan. Here's 90 days to improve. I laughed. I literally laughed on the phone. I'm like, what's funny is I've not once had this conversation as like, hey, I'm concerned. Hey, you're missing the metric. I know this just because I know the numbers, but that was one of the first times.
What did you think about your leader when you got that?
I was pissed. I was angry as hell. I went to lunch with my wife immediately afterwards, and I probably said some harsh things that would change this podcast from, a G-rated to a pretty nasty show. But my frustration was, if you knew I was struggling, how come you've never once reached out and said, hey, how can I help you? If you knew I was having challenges and I wasn't hitting my metrics, you see my commission checks. You knew at the time I wasn't making the money that I was accustomed to. I wasn't making the money that I wanted to. And he never knew what my goals were, but I wasn't making money to support what my goals were. But then I just showed up one day, phone call at 9 a.m. with a conference call at 9:30, on a conference call at 9:30 with my leader and HR and a performance improvement plan. And I laughed on the call. And I was like, this is hilarious. Because
did they ever get your respect back?
No. To this day, no.
And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, did you do everything you can to support people that you commit to? And it's cowardly as a leader to not have tough conversations. But they're not tough if you truly care about the person. If there's somebody in your organization that you're just taking a number from, right? Then get them, because because when you sit down and talk to them, they take 2 hours instead of 20 minutes. If they're not your right fix, send a message, make some phone calls, find a replacement for them, because you can always hire talent and replace that. But don't ever be the person that catches somebody out of right field, because that's just dirty.
Yeah, it actually is. It's funny you say that, right? I didn't, as we're having this conversation, I didn't realize how much of what I've learned from you I implement, because I too have had to give that conversation to people, and I've had to deliver performance improvement plans. And I had an employee that to this day, we're still friends. She no longer works with me, but at the time, she was struggling. She wasn't hitting her metrics, and we had multiple conversations. And one day I said, "Hey, let's chat." And so I met with her, and I had the green light. I had HR. She needs a performance improvement plan. She needs a performance improvement plan. And I, as a leader, was like, I understand that, but I'm not ready to give it to her because I still think there's areas to improve. Let me be the one to make that final decision. So I got them to agree. We sat down, drove down, had breakfast together, and I literally, I think I heard it from you. Tell them what's going to happen if they don't improve. I literally said, hey, XYZ, here's what's happening. I have to be honest with you. Our window to see results is really, really small right now. We've done a lot of things. I know we've tried these strategies. We've tried this. What's happening? How can I help you in the immediate? Because if we can't turn around results for the next 30 or 45 days, you're going to get a performance improvement plan. You're going to get frustrated. And realistically, in 3 to 4 months, you might not be here anymore. So how do we prevent that? And I remember the look on her face when she was like, am I getting this today? I'm like, no, this is me coming to you as your mentor. How can I prevent me from having to give this to you? And hearing you say that, how did you feel about that? The leader who gave me a plan without it out of right field compared to when I delivered a plan to someone who worked with me. We're still friends to this day. In that conversation, she came out that she had a promotion opportunity for more income from a different company. And that was her true goal, was she wanted to be promoted. She knew on my team, I didn't have an opening in Southern California for her, and I wasn't going to have one anytime soon. And it turned into, okay, well, here's what I need from you to hit your metrics in the time being. And when that opportunity comes, let me know, because I'll be your biggest fan. I'll write the best letter of recommendation, and I'll make those phone calls for you supporting your promotion. Fast forward, she left, she got a promotion. But I think about that conversation, it's something I've learned from you.
And the thing about PIPs, which are kind of silly. I mean, I don't want to bash anybody in HR that is listening to this, but I know in the worlds that I circle in, my HR support teams have never led a team, right? So I'm not about to take advice from somebody who's never led a team. But if you do it right, your people are apologetic. Your people are letting you down. Your people leave because you have high expectations, and you never have to really damage that relationship with the PIP if you're truly putting the work in. And whatever your work is, my work was always, you get 30 minutes of my life on Tuesday, non-negotiable, face-to-face or on the phone, and 27 minutes of that is you telling me how I can help you, and 3 minutes of that is telling you what I need. And you've been in many of those one-on-ones with me. Mm-hmm. And that's how I've always ran my life. And you give somebody 30 minutes of your life once a week, it does a lot of things to help you manage your workload and your flow and everything else. But more importantly, when you have those tough conversations, people leave because they're letting you down. People leave because they can't figure it out. And that's fine, because when somebody who's on the lower end of the tree quits and you salvage that relationship, right? They're in control. They make the decision. Your thought is like, sweet, I don't need to terminate them, and I can easily find the replacement of those numbers. But here's the other flip side of that. How many times have you got caught off guard when your top person has quit? A producer has quit because you weren't paying attention to the other things, right? And how to retain them. But that's probably a story for a different day.
It's funny, 100%, so much value in there. Yes, those conversations with the top people leave without having that attention can definitely be a whole nother episode. But that 30 minutes you give somebody, that hour you give somebody, whatever the timing is, it builds and develops that relationship. And it's okay, I don't you don't have to bash HR people, but I love what you just said. They don't lead a team. And it's funny, because I know I've had challenges where I've stood up for people, and I've stood up to my HR counterparts. I'm like, look, I got to be honest with you. I'm with this person. I'm with them in front of their customers. I see what's happening. This isn't a textbook. This isn't a theory. This is 20 years of leading people. This is 20 years of spending time with people. I need you to trust my gut. And if you can't trust my gut, then maybe I shouldn't be here. And I've had that conversation where I've stood up for people or fought to promote people when I was like, oh, they're not the right fit. I'm like, well, I got to be honest with you. If you're not going to let me promote my team how I want to see fit, then maybe I'm not the right fit, because, you have to trust and enable your leadership. So it's okay to bash HR. We're catapulting commissions, not catapulting HR. So we got about 5-7 minutes left, JP. One thing I want to pick your brain on, this professional leadership program through Harvard Business School. What is it? How'd you get involved? And what is your role there? I know you teach some really phenomenal people. You don't have to divulge your clients, but kind of give us a high end of what is it you're teaching there and what that program is.
Yeah, so many years in the direct sales field where your resume was the number of salespeople that you had underneath you. And I took an opportunity to go into the corporate role here at Vivint, where I was going to be dealing with retail, right? And I knew as soon as I let go of my salespeople, then my resume kind of mattered. So I looked into a leadership development course. A few people at Vivint had gone through this professional leadership development. So I applied, I got in, I went. It was a 8-month course with online learning, 4 weeks on campus, 12 weeks in between, a good full 6-8 months stuff. In the process, my coach in the program worked at a coaching school that I actually went to 10 years earlier just to learn some education behind the life of knowledge. And she said, you got to do this. You got to come in and coach. You went through the program. You have perspective that none of us have. You have the education, the background. And she referred me to the director of coaching for Harvard Business School. And I said, no, I don't have time. And then I got the time. And so maybe 6 months later, I reached back out. I said, I got the time now. I'm interested. I want to stay connected with the university. And so I had an interview with the director and got the job. And so now I don't teach. Harvard has a very strict curriculum they take people through, where there's coursework, then there's group discussion, then there's what do we call them? We call them living group acceleration programs, where you take 7 people in your caliber in different industries from across the world and put them in a living group. So you have cultural, you have age, you have sex, religion, everything involved. And for example, I put my feet up on my stool at home. I put my feet up all the time. Well, I had no idea that was insulting to certain cultures. And I'm in week 3.5, and finally these 2 guys are laughing. I'm like, what is so funny? He's like, we haven't told you, but when you stick your feet up on the table, it's insulting to us, but we like you, so we never said anything. I'm like, well, that's like if I have lettuce in my teeth and I'm going into an interview, you don't tell me I have lettuce in my teeth. That's not nice. That's like I feel like a jerk now that I had my feet up the entire time. So it's this cultural challenge combined with 7 other high performers that have never had to work with high performers. And so there's ego, there's clash, there's everything. And my role is to facilitate that cross-cultural high performance living group. But on top of that, they all have to do a personal case, which is a real world personal case, and how they're going to change their business. I coach them through that. I coach them through some leadership development plans and some reentry plans and some 360 reviews. We do some debriefs on those. But I've had the pleasure of working with people from all over the world, from you name the country, most likely in that region, and help them deal with the real world problems. And here's what I'll tell you. I don't care if you're a salesperson knocking door to doors, alarms, if you're a 19-year-old sitting in the house selling knives, if you're a 35-year-old man selling surgical mesh to doctors, right? You all operate with confidence. And if your confidence is high, your performance is high. If your confidence is low, your performance is low. And I've talked to people that are CFOs, the CFOs of of Alibaba, right? They're, one of Alibaba's companies. They were a client of mine, and she needed confidence, right? And every individual, they need to be told, you go across the middle, you take the big hit. You've worked your life to do this. You have the ability. Don't second guess yourself because you're at Harvard. Don't second guess yourself because you're getting thought for promotion. And they just need that encouragement. And what I tell all these students is, you and I could have been in the exact same class. Right? I just decided to come to this program 2 years earlier, so I went through it, and I can tell you how hard it is. But you and I could be in the same living group had we applied at the same time. So I am your peer here with perspective, and that's what coaching really is this unconditional love, this unconditional opinion for the benefit of that human. I have no gain. Right? They individually don't pay me. I'm not trying to keep them as a client. I'm trying to get them through the program with the highest level of confidence possible so they can go succeed. Those of you who are looking to level up in the corporate world or leaving sales in the corporate world, look into it. It's the Professional Leadership Program, PLD. It's 50 grand to go to the program. It's 25 grand more if you want to go get alumni status and do a couple extra courses. If the company pays for it, it's great, but reach out to me, reach out to Anthony, get my information. I'll introduce you to the director of it. It's an amazing program.
Fantastic. Catapulting Commissions family. On my show notes today, I'll leave a profile or a link to how to get a hold of JP, connect you through his LinkedIn profile. That leadership program is 50 grand, 75 grand. We've talked about personal development and what that number looks like for individuals. And the one thing that I have found, the higher the level of success of an individual, the more money they've spent in that professional development. Not necessarily how much have I spent for an undergraduate education or graduate education, even though those are development programs. I'm talking about additional, hey, I want to join this mastermind. I want to take this program. I want to connect with this group. So it definitely helps leveling up that network. Great insight and feedback there from you, JP. So as we wrap up and finish this show, there's a salesperson listening to this show right now that says, hey, I want to be a leader and I want to interview when I'm going to go to my company. I want to interview I want to get my position of leadership, right? Quick 1 minute answer. How would you tell, or what would you tell that person? Here's what you need to do to get into a position of leadership by being in sales.
I'd ask why 15 or 20 times until I heard the real reason. Right. And I, you know, obviously I'm on your podcast to talk a little bit about my experience. You know, I've had 5 jobs in 7 years at Vivint, and I think I'm finally in the role that I really can have the most influence on. And I get hit up by headhunters all the time for jobs that are more important than title. But I'm in a spot where I can have real, true influence. I wake up every day and I literally think, today I'm going to influence a human, change their life, and impact the course of history. That's what I live by, right? Is to influence a human, to change their life, to impact their life, to change the course of history. That's kind of my mantra. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want to be a leader, and I say, why? They tell me money. Like, you can get money without being a leader, right? I want to change somebody's life. Why? Because somebody did it for me. Well, what did that do for you? I'm going to find the real heartstring. So when they're sucking, I can go to them and I say, hey, you told me that this was important to you. So either tell me right now that it is important to you or isn't important to you, or you need to change what you're doing because you're failing at what's important to you. So I would just ask why, until I could find the real reason that they truly want to be a leader. And then they have their reason and you have your leverage point if you're their leader.
I like that. I like that a lot. What's the true reason on Catapulting Commissions that you want to advance that leadership skill, advance your career, level up your network? Today, we heard from my original coach, my original mentor, JP Arlie. JP, multiple hats, multiple kudos to you. Anybody listening, again, I stand by the team that has developed and coached me over my career, and JP is truly a pillar and foundation of that. Thank you for joining the Catapulting Commission show, and I will see you on the next one. Be sure to hit that subscribe button.
Right.